We're so grateful to have them. Energy security and critical minerals. Diana Furchtgott-Roth, Director of Center for Energy, Climate, and Environment, the Heritage Foundation.
Thank you so much for listening today. And thank you so much, Representative Pittenger, for inviting me. Señoras y señoras, estoy muy...
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be here today.
I'd like to start by asking all of you a question. You have been asking us a lot of questions, but I'd like to ask you, how many of you think that net zero is needed to save the planet? Great. And how many of you think that net zero will save the planet? None of you. Well, we've been talking a lot for the past 2 days about national security, the importance of a strong defense against Russia, the importance of ending human trafficking. But we haven't talked about the fundamental building block for achieving all these matters: inexpensive and reliable energy. Inexpensive and reliable energy that Russia has, China has, but we do not have, as actually could be seen a month ago with the meltdown right here in Spain due to 2 solar plants going offline. My message today is that all of us here in the West are spending too much on green energy, which is having no effect on the climate, but which is deindustrializing Europe and the United States and slowing economic growth. That leaves us too little for defense and policing to counter trafficking and transnational threats. The EU spends about $355 billion a year on renewables. The United States spends even more. This makes electricity more expensive rather than less expensive. It makes our economies weaker rather than stronger. We could be using these sums to counteract Russia. We could be creating a dome over Ukraine that would stop these drones. We could be using this money to give Ukraine weapons that prevent the drones from coming in. And it's not as though this spending helps the climate, as you all know, because you told me that you don't believe that net zero will save the planet. Even if Europe stopped using all fossil fuels today, this would only make a difference of 1/10 of 1 degree centigrade by the year 2100. And if the United States stopped using all fossil fuels today, it would make a difference of about 2/10 of a degree centigrade by the year 2100. This is because carbon use, coal use, emissions are increasing all over the world. Europe and the United States are just a drop in the bucket. Over the past 20 years, the world has spent $10 trillion on subsidies for wind and solar, and wind and solar cannot even stand on their own now. Imagine if the West, if Europe had had all this money and could use it to defend Ukraine against Russia and could use it to defend other countries against other aggressors. We would be in a far better position. But this spending does help China, because 75% of wind and solar equipment and 75% of batteries are made in China. And China used almost 5 billion tons of coal in 2024, over half of global coal consumption. China uses coal for half its electricity production and is building 2 coal-fired power plants a week. So while we weaken ourselves and we spend 350 billion euros a year trying to be green and sending energy-intensive manufacturing over to China to be made, they, the Chinese, are increasing their carbon emissions. We are offshoring our energy-intensive manufacturing to China, where it's being made with dirtier emissions. This does not lower global emissions. In fact, it raises them. Carbon emissions declined in the US by 1 million metric tons over the past 15 years. but they rose by about 6 billion metric tons in China. So take a look at this slide, which shows residential electricity prices all over the world. And you don't have to look at the details. The point is that the most expensive countries are Germany, the UK, Spain, the US. Germany is 39 cents per kilowatt hour. The UK is 35 cents per kilowatt hour for residential electricity. The US is 18 cents per kilowatt hour. Here in Spain, it's 22 cents per kilowatt hour. But the point is, those countries at the bottom, their electricity is less than 1 cent per kilowatt hour. China, India, Russia, and the OPEC countries, they're all less than 1 cent. They are pulling global energy-intensive manufacturing out of the West and towards them. So we are deindustrializing, and China is scooping up the manufacturing action. These are prices faced by consumers, and they may include some subsidies. But for a better comparison of how renewables actually increase electricity prices, let's take a look at the United States. With the United States, we're fortunate to have 50 different states, which means 50 different experiments. Each state in the United States can choose its mix of wind, solar, natural gas. It can choose how many renewables to make. So the top 10 states in terms of electricity prices, led by California at 33 cents per kilowatt hour, they all require wind and solar in their portfolios. They pass laws requiring wind and solar. By the way, this doesn't stop them pulling in electricity from states that do not require it, but that's what they require. And then the bottom 10 states, again, with one exception. There's one exception to each of the 10, and afterwards you can tell me, come up to me and tell me which state you think is the exception. But the bottom states do not require any wind and solar. And the bottom state in terms of electricity prices is 11 cents per kilowatt hour in Louisiana. And companies are leaving states with the most expensive electricity prices, and they're going to states with lower electricity prices. Just as energy-intensive manufacturing is leaving Europe and going to places like China and other places in Asia. Well, nuclear power and natural gas both have low emissions, and with new technology for scrubbers, coal also has low emissions. We're seeing changes in Europe. Over the past 3 weeks, Germany, Denmark, and Belgium have all praised nuclear power as being emissions-free. And France, which generates almost 70% of its electricity from nuclear power, sells power to its neighbors that have abandoned it. But production of natural gas is another low-emission source of fuel, and we should be using it. We have it here. Romania has vast reserves of natural gas, and it could be ramping up production and selling it to all of Europe. And Spain also has gas. In the heart of Spain's wine country, beneath the vineyards of La Rioja, there's an energy revival taking place. The Viura gas field, nestled between the villages of Sotés and Hornos de Montecalvillo, is poised to become a symbol of Spain's pivot in energy policy if it is allowed to do so. HEYCO Energy Iberia is spearheading the expansion of the Viura field, aiming to extract 1 million cubic meters of gas per day by the end of 2026. That's about 1% of Spain's global total gas consumption, but that's a significant figure in a country that imports over 99% of its natural gas. The Viura field, discovered in 2010, has already produced several million cubic meters of gas. It's one of only 2 active gas fields in Spain, the other being the much smaller El Romeral in Andalusia. In January 2025, Spain recorded its highest domestic gas output in 5 years, with 120,000 gigawatt hours extracted, almost 60% of the total output for all of 2024 achieved in 1 month. And this surge was largely thanks to Vura, which is now the only active conventional gas extraction in the country. These operations are all designed to meet Spain's very stringent environmental standards. Now, there's a 2021 climate change law which bans new hydrocarbon exploration, and this is a law that should be changed. But HEYCO's operations continue under pre-existing conditions. And by the way, domestically produced gas emits fewer carbon emissions than imported liquefied natural gas, which makes Vura not just a strategic asset, but also an environmental one. To conclude, neither a strong defense nor a strong economy can be built on net zero. And net zero is going to make no difference to the climate. Why then rush over the net zero cliff like lemmings, especially since Russia, China, Iran and other countries are not rushing that way? We need funds to help Ukraine. We need funds to stop human trafficking. We need funds for more policing. And net zero is the place we can get them. Thank you very much for listening. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.